bringing you the very best music from film, television, and video games. This is the Cinematic Sound radio show on demand.
We're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony, and in this cartoony we're invading your TV. With comic dispensers, we crack up all the censors. On Tiny Toon Adventures, get a dose of comedy. So here's Acme Acres, it's a whole wide world apart. Our home sweet home extends alone, a cartoon work of art.
The scripts were rejected, expect the unexpected.
On Tiny Toon Adventures, it's about to start.
They're furry, they're funny,
They're Babs and Buster Bunny. Montana Max has money. Elmira is a pain. He's hunting
and plucky.
Dizzy Devil yucky. Furball's unlucky. And Go-Go is insane. At Acme University we earn our Toon degree. The teaching staff been getting laughs since 1933. We're tiny, we're toony, we're all a little loony. It's Tiny Toon Adventures, come and join the fun. And now our song is done.
Hello, you're very welcome to a film music mix special, and a great pleasure to be here with Bruce Broughton. Bruce, hello.
Hello.
And what we're going to do for the next hour or so is showcase some of your best music, which dates from I suppose the late 70s through to now, bang up to date. So a tremendous body of work, and it's a good opportunity really to hear a little bit about each of these projects and some of the kind of musical influences that you poured into them, because obviously as a composer you're pouring so much enthusiasm, love, and mostly, I suppose it depends what film.
Mostly time.
Time.
I'm pouring a lot of time into it.
And Dallas, which are two big TV projects, but I mean, would you consider them platforms that got you to where you are now?
Well, when I finished university, I started working at CBS Television. They had a music department, which they don't have any longer. And CBS, that department produced music for the shows that CBS was producing, which at that time were shows like Gunsmoke, Hawaii Five-0, the original one. They had produced in earlier years shows like Twilight Zone, Have Gun Will Travel, a host of comedies and things. And in fact, Jerry Goldsmith had begun work in that same department 10, 15 years earlier. So it was really the place that I began to learn about the craft of film scoring. Now, I was not hired as a composer, I was hired as a music supervisor, which in those days really meant to be a cue selector. I was tracking music. I was pulling music from libraries that we had to fit into the shows that we were producing. And occasionally we would come up short on a piece. We wouldn't have a piece that did something specific or unique. So I would get to write that, and I would write a cue, and I would write 2 or 3 cues, and we would tack them on to the end of somebody else's recording. And little by little, I got my experience doing that. The great thing about it was that when I was selecting music, if something didn't work, it was easy to replace. And so it was a way of being able to practice with music to see what worked with scenes, what didn't work with scenes, what was particularly effective, what producers liked, what they didn't like, all that sort of stuff. And it also gave me a strong sense that this kind of music was made to edit. It was made to be cut up. It was made to be moved around. It wasn't at all like a symphony or a sonata or a concert piece. It was really a utilitarian kind of music, which if you wanted to have a strong aesthetic component, that was up to you. It really wasn't necessary, but it was up to you. And there were some composers we hired, and I came in contact with, who had that strong aesthetic component. But there are other people that we met that were just, very, very, very good at what they did.
Well, leading on from the TV work then, you went into TV movies, which at least gives you a bit of development opportunities. The Blue and the Grey, 1982, is a fantastic score. And again, Intrado, I suppose we should thank them because they've released so much of your music, which is terrific. And that 2 CD set they released quite recently was a treat for many of us because very few had heard that music. And Blue and the Grey, can you remember much about it? And
yeah, I do remember the Blue and the Grey. I had, as I said, after I left CBS, I was freelancing. I did a lot of television series. That's where I did Dallas and Quincy, things like that. To get into television movies was the next step up. They're not the same people who work in series as who work in television movies. And to work in miniseries, which was the Blue and the Grey, was another step up. So it was a matter of coming into contact with these people and having them either know who you were, or taking a chance on you, or you being introduced to them somehow. I can't remember exactly how I met Larry White, who was the executive producer on the Blue and the Grey, but somehow I did, and we had an interview, and we hit it off, and he hired me. Now, Larry turned out to be a great guy. He was just a great guy, wonderful man. He was just a very nice man, and he was a good producer, and we got on great. But he was very specific about what he wanted with the Blue and the Grey. And the Blue and the Grey, the music from that time was music that was really familiar to me. For one thing, I had spent a lot of time working on Westerns and Americana already, but also my background. I grew up in the Salvation Army, which relied a lot upon 19th century tunes. In fact, they borrowed some of the Civil War tunes and put their own words to them. So I knew the style, I knew the harmonies, I knew the voicings. It was something that I was comfortable with, but it was also a great opportunity to do something dramatic. So once I had the Blue and the Grey down, I became sort of an Americana composer, It was kind of funny.
that's true.
Yeah, no, I've done a lot of, people say I've done a lot of Westerns. I've actually only done 2 Westerns, but I've done a lot of Americana, and in many, many different styles. But the Blue and the Grey was a nice one. It was a nice show, and it gave me a lot of room to rummage around in.
There's a couple of cues now. We're gonna showcase The Prodigal and the First Olympics, Athens 1896. Another 2 very diverse scores. The Prodigal is much more low key, very highly melodic. But then the First Olympics, there's some very exciting music there. So,
well, the First Olympics, that was another show that Larry White, the producer of Blue and the Grey, did, which is basically why I did it. And I remember we didn't really have that much music in it. And he had a budget. We were recording it over in England, and he had budgeted for a reasonably small-sized television orchestra with a lot of music in mind. Well, we didn't have so much music, so I said, Larry, look, do you mind seeing we don't have so much music that I can get a big orchestra? And his first thing was, no. He wrote to the producer, no. And then he sat and thought about it for me and says, well, yeah, okay, yeah, that's okay. So it was really the first chance I had to work with a sizable orchestra. Blue in the Gray was an orchestra of about 35 or 40 people. First Olympics was like 65, 70 people. Mm. The Prodigal was something else. The Prodigal was a film that was produced by Billy Graham, the evangelist. It was entirely a commercial production by a company by an evangelical company that had a motion picture arm. And a lot of the people, the producer who hired me, had a background working with Blake Edwards, and he had done many motion pictures and all that kind of stuff. So it was it was a real film, but with this evangelical story. So what they needed in it was a song. So I got a chance to write a song, which we had B.J. Thomas sing at the end, which was great. And in all respects, it was a nice score. It was a nice film. It still shows up in church basements here and there, But it was the thing that gave me a start. And now that I had The Prodigal, now I became a feature composer. It didn't get me into the features immediately because it was a kind of a soft, independent film, but it got me into the thing. Actually, what The Prodigal did was it gave me a credit to be able to get to Ice Pirates, which was a low-budget movie at MGM that was troubled. I got the movie because I didn't cost a lot. They couldn't get a big-name composer for it, but I had this movie credit that made me able to at least be in the running. So I got the Ice Pirates. So now I had 2 movies, and the next movie after that was Silverado. So it all kind of worked in a nice line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it flowed quite neatly.
Yeah, and the music was, at that point, the music was different too, because what I had done on Blue and the Gray was not like what I had to do on the Olympics. The Olympics was not like what I had to do on Prodigal. All of these shows, particularly the television series, I think the great thing about the television series for me was that in those days, we always recorded with an orchestra. I would do 1 or 2 shows a week, and I would have that many recording sessions. Well, I might be working on, in fact, I often did, I worked on a Western in the morning, and then I'd run across town and I'd record my Quincy, which was a show about
the doctor, wasn't it?
Yeah, about a coroner, so it's the death of the week. And then you get to do Dallas. Dallas was a soap opera. We had all these different things going on. I did science fiction and soap operas and coroner dramas and police dramas. So by the time I got to the movies, I had a good working knowledge of several genres and had a lot of, this is the best part, I'd had a lot of practice as a composer and had also a lot of experience with the orchestra, which was great to get into the movies with that. So by the time Silverado came around, I wasn't a beginner. I'd already had several years' work underneath my belt.
Music there from the Prodigal and the first Olympics, Athens 1896, and Silverado as well. And this was Lawrence Kasdan's,
Right.
let's say that was his third film.
His third
There was
film.
Body Heat, and then I mean, and this was it was a fantastic film. It's still adored today, and I think the first ride is one of those cues which everybody just you can't help but kind of smile whenever you hear it. It's so thrilling.
Yeah, it's. I still hear a lot about Silverado. The amazing thing for me was that after Silverado came out, Silverado was mildly successful. It was the first Western in a long, long, long time. The last Western that had done well before Silverado was Blazing Saddles, which was a comedy. And the point of that is that it was a parody. And when you parody a genre, the genre is pretty much dead. So what Larry was trying to do was to produce a Western for people who had never seen Westerns. And I said, well, like who? And he said, well, think of it. He said, you and I grew up with this stuff. He said, but our kids didn't grow up with Westerns. He said, there's a whole genre there that is completely unknown to a younger generation. So Silverado has a little bit of everything. It has the duel in the street. It has the good guy, the bad guy, the corrupt sheriff, the bar. I mean, it has all this other stuff. But for me, it was just an exciting opportunity. And I think that a lot of the excitement that I had, and also my relationship with Larry at the time, we understood the film in kind of a similar way. He had a lot of trust in what I did. He gave me a very long leash, and that was in the days before synthesizers, so I didn't have to play everything on a synthesizer and pretend like that was what it was going to sound like.
Right.
I played everything on the piano, and it was very confusing, to him particularly. And he was very patient, and he was very good about the whole thing. And when we got to the recording stage, it was just this huge burst of energy on a genre that hadn't seen a recording stage in years and years and years and years. So the horn players were so excited. It was really kind of funny. I still hear about that. So yeah, I mean, the music did very well, and it became very exciting. And the film itself just never went away. It stayed on initially as a video rental, and then when cable came to be, it's on cable all the time. And it's odd because when it was produced, the most famous actor in it was one of the guys from Monty Python.
Yeah, that's right.
Now all those guys are really well known, but at the time they weren't that well known.
Yeah,
but John Cleese was.
That's true. Yeah.
So, and in fact, one of the kids in the movie, the little boy who comes and announces to the sheriff that there's a fire, that's Larry Kasdan's son. I think it's Jake Kasdan,
yes.
who's also a director
Went
now
on to
with
make
a lot of really fine films under his belt. So
That's right.
it's been a while, but no, Silverado still goes on. It's a very smart piece, and I was very happy to have it. And of course, after that, for me personally, I was definitely a movie guy.
Yeah,
So
without a doubt. I mean, and of course that Silverado Entitled is performed in concert halls all across the world.
Right. Yeah, just played a lot.
yes, from Silverado, we really had, as you say, your career was heavily focused on movies, and a relationship started with Steven Spielberg. Amazing Stories and the brilliant Young Sherlock Holmes, which such an amazing score.
Sort of. I mean, it sort of started with Steve. Well, I guess it started with Stephen in that he was the executive producer, but I really didn't meet Stephen until we got on the dubbing stage, when the score was already finished.
Oh, okay.
And it was pretty funny because Young Sherlock Holmes was probably the most fun I ever had.
Oh, such a great score. Well, you can tell, you can hear it in the music.
Oh, I really liked the movie. I liked the movie then. I still like the movie.
Yes,
it's really entertaining.
It's aged well, yeah.
And the music's very, because the character in it is very thoughtful and very much in his head, and you know, all this. The music is the same way. The music is just running all over the place, and also the film is constructed almost like an animated film, in that no scene lasts very long. The scenes are just running into each other, just all over the place. So when we did the score came out very well. It was a great week of recording, and I had a great time. So we got back to the dubbing stage, and Stephen came in to watch what his movie was doing, you know. And he said to Barry, the director, he said, "Boy, I really like this score." And a minute or so later, he says, I really like this score. So Barry says, "Oh, well, meet Bruce. He's the guy who wrote it." So Stephen looked at me and he laughed. He says, "I really like the score." And that, whatever relationship I had with Stephen, there were several things I did with him over the years. It really started on the dubbing stage of Young Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. But the Mark Mackenzie I spoke with recently, and of course he really looks up to you, and that was his first orchestrating gig.
That was his first gig. He was very funny because he was very excited. He'd never been to Europe before, you know. And here he had this major motion picture, and he's going to Europe at the same time. I mean, it was like almost more than he could bear. And there we were at Abbey Road. I mean, everything was just so much. I mean, he did a great job.
Yeah.
And Mark went on to have a great career, you know, after that. But it was really a lot of fun.
I think the cues we're going to showcase here are The Heart of London, Waxing Elizabeth, and then the end titles. So
right.
Can you introduce them just with any particular reminiscences?
I can't remember which one is the City of London, but
The Heart of London is whenever Holmes arrives, the horse and carriage. You have the voiceover. I mean, unfortunately, the music's barely audible in the film.
I think it's the version of the Holmes theme, and it's a great big.
Yes, it's very grand, stately. Like, you know, you can just tell you're in London.
Actually, I do remember that. Yeah. I remember that cue when it was recorded because. As I say, these were the days before synthesizers, right? I mean, now you have to mock up everything on a synthesizer and show the director what you're doing. It's a work in progress. In those days, you played themes. I played the Silverado theme for Larry. I recorded it on a cassette. He played the piano version over and over and over until he finally figured out what it was. Because, you know, on the piano it can sound like chopsticks. So Barry was more musical in that he was more focused on music. And so he came over to my studio and I sat there at the piano and I played my theme for him and for Mark Johnson, the producer. I played it through once and stupidly said, "So what do you think?" And he went, "Yeah." He wasn't overwhelmed, you know. He made a couple of suggestions, which actually were good suggestions in the tune. And then I played him the next theme, the main title, you know, which I call the investigating theme. And he sort of shrugged his shoulders and said, "Oh, okay." You know, I mean, I'm sure that he walked out with Mark and said, "I don't know what we're going to do. We've only got a couple of weeks. I guess we go with this guy or not. I don't know. I don't know what he was in his mind because I didn't know Barry either. I just gotten that job basically on the tails of Silverado."
Right.
So it was a very quick schedule, and we got to the scoring stage, and we got to that cue, the entry into London or whatever it is. And he came running up, Barry came running out and said, "Wow, that's great. What is that? What is that theme? Are we going to hear that again?" I said, "Well, yeah, that's your theme." "Yeah, but are we going to hear it again?" I said, "Yeah, Barry, that's your theme. That's the theme." "Yeah, but are we going to..." So, yeah, I remember that theme really well because, you know, to their credit, these guys had an enormous amount of trust. Nobody can hear what it's going to be on the piano. I mean, I can't hear. If John Williams sat down and played the piano to me, and he's a good pianist, if he sat down and tried to talk through his latest theme, you know, I'm pretty knowledgeable, and I could probably get a good idea what he's going to do, but I wouldn't really be able to tell entirely what he's going to do because he's going to have ideas, you know. So these guys were very hopeful and very trusting, And again, you know, the score turned out great. Waxing Elizabeth.
Incredible action cue. I mean, that's just balls to the wall. I mean,
Well, you know, Waxing, you know, Elizabeth is very similar to another piece, and we used that in the. There wasn't very much temp score in Young Sherlock Holmes. What there was, I think I pretty much chose. In fact, a lot of it came from the first Olympics. It's the same orchestra that played it.
Okay,
and
right.
so there was a similarity in style because I knew it was kind of a. First Olympics has sort of a traditional style, you know, with that symphony orchestration. So we got to Waxing Elizabeth, and I was pretty much committed to the style and the piece by the time we got there, because it was the one piece of temp music that was really successful, because it happened to have all the beats and everything. So then the problem was how to work it with the Rami Tep guys who were singing that chant, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And, you know, Barry was no help at all. I said, so what are these guys saying? And he said, oh, they're saying, I don't remember. I thought, great, I got to have him sing, you know. He doesn't remember. So we figured out, you know, what it sounded like, and I made phonetic things, and we built it into this piece, which is in 7/4. It's a really odd meter, and then just, you know, and then you just kind of go for it. But you know, that was the thing about Silverado and Young Sherlock Holmes, and about actually a lot of movies at that time. You could go for it. You could just go for it. There was no be careful, don't step on my line here, don't say too much, and be very careful emotionally. You could just go for it. Silverado is just unrestrained enthusiasm and excitement. It's just out there, which the characters are too, in some ways. You know, they're bigger than life. And in Young Sherlock Holmes, there's this absolute joy, this boyish joy in his discoveries and what he's doing and his inventions and you know, the whole idea of you're on an adventure. So that was what the music did. Yeah. So by the time we got to the end of it, I could wrap up all the themes and play, you know, most of the themes and just feel unfettered. It was really a lot of fun. I mean, emotionally, it was really a lot of fun, and it didn't have a lot of the things associated with it that often you get into a movie where there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of worry that the composer's going to change something in the movie, or that a scene's not going to work, the music didn't quite, you know, whatever it is. It was just a wonderful experience, and when you get those things, you can only be grateful. I have a great memory of all of that. And they gave me an extra week in London because they liked it so much.
Right.
They let me stay an extra week. They paid for an extra week for me to stay in London, which was, you know, coming from California, that's a lot of fun. They gave me a vacation.
Nice one. And of course, you worked with Eric Tomlinson. The legendary score.
Yeah, he was spectacular. Yeah,
yeah.
Eric was spectacular. Yeah.
leading on from Young Sherlock Holmes, and The Boy Who Could Fly is once again you're channeling the kind of best elements of your style, because I mean there's some glorious flying music in there. It's a very gentle kind of piano and guitar ideas, and this is interesting because you scored it for the film in LA, and then you did it. Was this part of the extra week you had? You scored it?
No. Actually, the way that came about was there was a guy who really liked the score a lot. Really liked the film, but he particularly liked the score. And there were no plans to produce an album for it, and so he wanted to hear it. So he paid for it. He went to Varese Sarabande, which is the only piece I have on Varese Sarabande, and said, if he'd be willing, I'd be willing to pay the expenses for this score. So I went over to London and I re-recorded the whole thing.
That's quite a treat.
Yeah, it was quite a treat. It was quite nice. And then they just reprinted or re-released the album a couple months ago.
That's right, 1,000 copies.
It's out there again.
Yeah.
And it's really the only. There is another album that floats around that Infrada put together, which is a what do you call it? It's not really a commercial. It's not for sale, but that's the only album of the music that you can get from the album for real.
Mm.
So I mean, if you want to buy the soundtrack, that's the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's the one to get. Yeah, which is it's a bit shorter, but that.
Well, it was made for an LP.
Yeah.
I mean, in those days, albums were only 30 minutes long, 25 to 30 minutes long. That's all you could stand on an LP. Once we got to CDs, there are other things too. There are licensing concerns, how much it costs to pay the orchestra and all this. What they used to do in the 60s and 70s, like the Jaws scores like this, they would actually re-record they would rearrange the cues for the album, and then have a session just for the album, since they had to pay the musicians anyway.
Right.
Rather than pay for 80 musicians, they would pay for 50 with a reorchestration. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those things that you think are the original soundtrack are not really. They're really re-recordings that the composer did after the fact. So this is sort of in that same, although this is the same music.
I see, okay. Moving on to 1987, so we're approaching the 90s, just to cast your mind back. So Harry and the Hendersons, or Bigfoot and the Hendersons, as it was known for us in the UK, again was such a lovely film, made more charming by the music. I mean, you had this lovely kind of Mozart opening.
Why is that?
Well, they're listening to it in the car, aren't they? I think they're supposed to be.
Yeah, well, it was odd, you know. It really has nothing to do with Harry. I mean, Mozart has nothing to do with Harry and the Hendersons. I mean, with any element. But what had happened was the music editor had found a piece of Mozart, which is an overture, not an overture that I know, and most people don't know, called Ascanio in Alba, which he stuck in for the main title. And it had this lighthearted, jaunty feeling, you know, which really the director loved and the editor loved, and he was like, oh, we really love this feeling. We like the style and the whole thing. So I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll write the main title in the style of Mozart. And then let's do this. Let's figure out that this is a Mozart-loving family. That every chance they have to hear music in the car, in the house, they're listening to Mozart. So I recorded symphonies and piano sonatas and this and that and all that kind of stuff. And I also recorded Ascanio in Alba, so that the way the main title works is first you see the car driving through and all the titles come on, and then you see, when you come in close on the family driving in the car, and they're listening to the radio. And what they're listening to is Ascanio in Alba by Mozart.
Yes, right,
and on the album, there's actually a point at which my piece becomes Mozart. It's very hard to tell if you don't know where Mozart starts.
Okay, right, yes.
So that part, and then it goes into the big scream when he hits Harry and knocks him over.
Right.
But there is a definite piece of Mozart in that main title, you know. And then, of course, what happened on the dubbing is what always happens. They decided not to use Mozart. There are one or two places in the film where you can actually hear Mozart playing in the background, but for the most part, everything we recorded we didn't use, you know. So we've got this odd Mozartian main title in this thing about a Bigfoot, you know. But it's cute, and I like the piece. So.
Well, it is, and the way you interpolate the main theme, you know, da, 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 it's so clever. You know, it kind of it comes up here and there in the film, and there's some great. I mean, even the song is so nice.
The song was built over my theme. Yeah.
Yes. Whenever they first released the soundtrack, they had a horrible sax replace that lovely kind of echo chamber flute. Thankfully, whenever Enchada released the CD, they had the flute. You remember the original version?
Yeah, I think what they did is they put in it's been years since I've heard it. I think they put in a flute or something playing my theme.
Yes.
So they could get tied into the movie, because the song actually was so different. Even though they were they were constructed in a similar way. I mean, Barry Mann, who wrote the music for the song, had built it over my material that he constructed for the song.
Yeah, for the kind of instrumental bridge bit. Yes, yeah.
I didn't know that I was lost. I found myself in you.
But then you really are giving it a big emotional punch at the end, because that kind of finale when they say goodbye to Harry is, I guess, what every composer loves, to give it, because I mean you're driving the film for a good 4 minutes there.
Yeah, well, you know, it was a nice film too. Like I said, in those days, you could get out and shout. It's like, well, you know, when Harry says goodbye to the family, or the family says goodbye to Harry, it has this very big, very warm, mushy, though I don't think treacly,
no.
ending. You know, it's just very warm because the Harry character is so warm, and the guy who played him was a very nice man, very tall, and a really nice man.
Yes,
and what you see in all the costuming, you see his eyes. I mean, those are the guy's eyes, and he was a nice man. And the eyes being the center of the soul, or the gateway to the soul, you could see it. Just that was part of what Harry was, even though the costuming, the design was so spectacular. He was a very, 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 very sweet character. It was a very sweet movie.
Well, let's say the main title, and then the goodbye scene, and also the unused end title, actually. Because again, it's kind of back to the Mozart thing,
Right.
which works really
It's
well.
a recapitulation of the opening plus an extension where you get to hear the theme by itself. So.
music from Harriet and the Hendersons. Now, The Old Man and the Sea, a classic Tiomkin score, of course, and you were given a great opportunity here to give a new musical voice. This was Anthony Quinn, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Anthony Quinn. To tell you the truth, I don't remember too many of the details about this. What I do remember is that we had to record it in Germany, which was odd for me. You know, I'm not being in Germany. That wasn't odd, but recording with an orchestra.
Yes.
The form was odd, and also I remember it fondly because it was my first album with Entrada. And as I think you mentioned earlier, Entrada has been my home base for most of the albums. They've been very, very, very good about putting things out, and they do a great job. So, Old Man and the Sea is still there. I remember it as being a good movie. It was an interesting movie, and I don't have any bad memories of it. I just remember we were in Germany. We were in Munich, I think. Yeah, Munich. And and also on that score, I met Mike Ross. Mike Ross was the engineer.
Oh yeah, Mike Ross Trevor.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Mike became my mixer for all the things I did subsequently whenever I was in London. Mike's a spectacular mixer, you know. And he did Tombstone, and he did,
Lost in Space.
Well, he actually didn't do Lost in Space.
Right.
That was one he couldn't do. He did one cue in Lost in Space that he was available for.
Right.
But for just about everything, Mike did that stuff.
Right.
And
well, of course, he did those. Yeah, he did those wonderful Herman scores you re-recorded with the Sinfonia.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, anything I could do with the Sinfonia, I try to get Mike. Yeah. Because he was just spectacular. And he's a very kind of a low-key guy, and he has great ears. And he would just say, I think we could use one more. And I said, come on, Mike, what do we need it for? He says, believe me, or he'd say, trust me, or something like that. I said, we need one more, and I'd come back and then he'd tell me specifically what it was. The basses aren't in tune or something like that. He'd go, the basses aren't in tune. Like, whoever listens to the basses. I mean, he just has really great ears. Yeah. He's a terrific mixer. Yeah, so there were a lot of things that happened out of Old Man and the Sea that really had nothing to do with the show. They just turned out to be good points that I remember. Old Man and the Sea. Now, Disney, your connection with Disney was
pretty affluent during the 90s, wasn't it? Rescuers Down Under, a great sequel to the first one, and absolutely Cody's First Flight. And I'm sure you've heard this from other people. What a cue! 6 minutes of just pure joy.
Yeah, it's a boy's dream. Well, actually, my association with Disney, such as it is, actually began when I was a boy. Because when I was a boy, I wanted to be an animator, and Disney was my hero as an animator.
Okay, right.
And it's a good thing I didn't become an animator, because I met some of those guys and they're really good. I wasn't that good, but being able to work on a Disney product, particularly an animated product, and later on the theme parks, was really, it was a big deal. It was really a big deal, because that was a connection, as I said, I had from the time I was really very small. I think they came to me on Rescuers, not because of any interest in animation, but because I'd done Silverado. And they wanted an adventure score. This was an adventure movie. There are no songs in it. It's the last movie they did with no songs. And I think they were pretty unsure as to whether I would do an animated picture or not, because a lot of composers don't like to do animation. They just happened to find one who did. And I said, yeah, sure, right. And really? Yeah, sure. This sounds great. This sounds like a lot of fun. And it was. It was a great job. I mean, Rescuers is a great job. And you know what I learned from that? A couple of years ago, I was waiting for my wife at a hairdresser salon, and a girl came up. She was about 23, 24. She was the girl who takes appointments. And she walked up to me and she said, I just figured out who you are. I said, oh, who's that? She said, you're Bruce Broughton. You're the man who wrote the music to the Rescuers Down Under. I said, why do you know this? And she said, because when I was a little girl, The Rescuers Down Under was my favorite film. And I watched it over and over and over again. She said, I love the music. She said, would you sign my CD? Now, I thought that was a very charming story. I still think it's a charming story.
Yeah.
But I found out since then, I was talking to the University of Nebraska, to the music school. And when I was being introduced, the man gave my credits, Silverado, Young Sherlock Holmes, Rescuers Down Under. When he said Rescuers Down Under, the place cheered, because they're all that age. And I realized that these films, like The Boy Who Could Fly, The Rescuers Down Under, Homeward Bound, a lot of these Disney films, they still go on and on and on because kids watch these films over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I've heard people talk to me almost like a religious experience, saying, one guy said to me recently, he said, what does it feel like to know that you had such a huge impact on somebody's life growing up? And I said, frankly, until you told it to me this minute, I had no idea, But they really, some of this music really is invested with a lot of memories of things that you'll never be aware of.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like kind of smells, isn't it? Whenever you hear music, it brings everything flooding back.
Yeah.
And Rescuers Down Under, Cody's First Flight is certainly one of those moments. Cody's First Flight from Rescuers Down Under, just one of the many highlights from Bruce's career. Now, I spoke to John Birmingham recently, and he cites O Pioneers as one of his favourite scores. And once again, we're back with a kind of Western genre, and it is such a great one.
Well, see, that's not Western, that's Americana.
Okay, Americana.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
Yeah. But you're right. I've heard other people say it's a Western score. Well, that was also the beginning of another really nice association, because by that time I was firmly I was a feature writer, and I had guys asking me if I would do a TV show. Now, some feature guys don't like doing television. I always like television. I like it because there's a lot of variety in it. I like the speed with which it's done. I usually like the stories. The stories are often more interesting than movies and all that. So I mean, I was always interested in TV. So I had a lunch with Glenn Jordan, the director who I'd known for years as being one of the very top television directors, and Craig Anderson, who I didn't know, who was the producer. And we had this great lunch, and they talked about O Pioneers. Of course, I was interested in doing it. I knew if Glenn did it, it had to be a good job, you know. And then one of them asked me the oddest question: "Do you think you can still do TV?" Like, have you lost your TV chops or something like that? I thought, no, I think I can still do it. But I did a couple of things with Glenn after that, and with Craig. And again, these are two great guys. The associations are as nice as the jobs, frankly. And I always liked Go Pioneers. That very Americana theme was constructed as I was taking a walk on Maui. I remember that. I was in the Hawaiian Islands trying to work out this theme in my head, you know. So the long walk gave me a long theme. It worked out well.
pioneers. Now, we're back with Disney again. A couple of great scores now for Homeward Bound and Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
Right.
Once again, time for you to let rip. Homeward Bound, you're wearing your heart on your sleeve, but that one, I mean, who cannot, start welling up whenever Shadow falls down that...
Or when he comes back, that's usually when they really...
Well, yeah, absolutely.
I just cried so hard.
But it's such a noble theme. I mean, it just oozes this kind of respect for, I suppose we all love our pets, don't we? I mean, this is obviously...
Well, it's a real adventure film, and it was an opportunity again to write a big theme. I've had lots of opportunities to write big themes, which I was really happy for. But Homeward Bound, as I said earlier, it's one of those films that people grow up with, and it's invested with a lot of stuff that, I mean, to me, it's a nice score. And I like the movie, but I can't see it the other way. But I'm grateful that other people do.
And Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
Honey, I Blew Up the Kid,
That tremendous action cue toward the end. Do you remember? I mean, the orchestra must be having a blast.
Yeah, actually, there's one sequence when the kid has the car in his hands, and his brother and the girl are in the car, and he's swinging them all around like this.
Yes.
The music is going lickety-split. I mean, it's just going so fast. So it's actually impossible to play. And one of the violinists, after we got through, walked up to me and he looked me in the eye and he said, this piece is impossible to play. And I said, yeah, I know. I just wanted the effect. He goes, okay. And he walked out. But the concertmaster, every time we brought that piece out, she says, oh my gosh, here's that piece again. It was really hard to play. But, they played it great on that show, on that score. It's pretty giddy. There's a lot of energy there.
Let's hear some music from Honey, I Blew Up the Kid and Homeward Bound, The Incredible Journey.